episode 4 of my Python crash course. Today I'm going to be talking about loops, which are lines of code that repeat themselves, and we're going to be talking about different kinds of loops and why we need them for our game. But the first thing I wanted to mention is that if my display looks different at all, I recently purchased a new monitor. So if some things are skewed, some things are larger, smaller, that's why. But my video output should still be the same, so I'm hoping for good things. So anyways, let's begin with what does a loop look like? Well, a loop is, as I said, a line of code that repeats. So I could take this line of code, hit enter, and then print it again. And if I run, this should be the, except for this copied line, this should be the code from the end of yesterday. We're going to type a letter, and you notice this is a letter prints twice, the sentence, because we have two print statements here, which is fine and all, but printing this isn't very useful. So let's make something more useful. What I want to do is I want to make a loop that keeps asking for letters until we get, or until a non-letter has been inputted. Let's put it that way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a loop for that. And the best way to do this is to make an infinitely running loop and then a way to exit that loop. So what I'm going to do is open what's called a while loop, and a while loop checks a condition. So whatever condition could be 4 equals 5, which in this case is false. Could be, you see down here, X in letters. I'm going to write the word true with a capital T, hit a colon, and you notice the color changed. So this true is pretty self-explanatory. Whenever we ask a yes or no question, like with an if statement that I introduced last episode, it's either going to return true or false. Right now we want true, and I'm going to hit tab on all of these. And again, after we put our boolean here, we're going to write a colon, and then everything after that is indented, very similar to the if statement. And what this is saying is all of this code is currently in the while loop. So what we can do is we can run this. And if I type in, I don't know, a letter A, if this is a letter, and then it asks to type a character again. So this line of code is infinitely looping. But every time it goes up to this top, every time it goes to the top, it goes all the way to, it runs all the way to the bottom, goes back, and then double checks this boolean. In this case, it's true, so every single time it's going to run. But if I had something like x equals 5, then it's going to stop when x is not equal to 5. I'm going to set this back to true, and I'm going to stop our code so it doesn't break. So I'll run this again. And if I write H, this is a letter, U, this is a letter, the percentage sign, this is not a letter, and it's going to keep running. So I'll hit stop, which this is fine and all, but we also want to exit the loop. We want this program to end at some point. So how do we exit a loop that will infinitely run? With a command called break. Again, you notice it's turned blue. Repl.it recognizes this as a function, or as a method, and it says, all right, all good. What I'm going to do is, whenever I reach here, whenever Repl.it reaches here, it's going to look at the closest loop it's in. So if there's a while loop here and then another while loop outside of it, it's going to exit this one. So if we run this again, and I type in a bunch of random letters, as soon as I type in something that's not a letter, it says this is not a letter, and then stops. And you notice this doesn't say stop anymore, it's asking to run again. So we've now reached a point where we can enter an infinite loop, and if a certain action happens, we can break it. But right now, I want to make something a little bit more interesting. I want to make, instead of a letter tester, so testing whether we're typing in letters or not, I want to make a group of words, and I want to award points based on how many letters are in the word. And you notice this is very similar. We're starting to get into like, what does our basic game look like? So in order to get there, we're going to need our handy dandy another array called word list, and we're going to set it equal to open close square bracket. So it's a lot. So we're making an array, but we're not putting anything in it yet. And you notice because our variable name is multiple words, the traditional syntax is to put them all in lowercase and then underscores to separate words. So now that we're here, I also want to make something called a submission count. And we'll set it equal to 0. And every time we add a word to word list, we're going to increase submission count by 1. So I'm going to change this to type in word. And instead of checking if X is in letters, we're going to check a variable, which I'll make up here. And I'm going to call it word is valid. Remember, make sure it's on the correct indent. And then we're going to check if word is valid. Word is valid. And here we're going to set it to a line that I'm not really going to explain. I'm just going to pull it from elsewhere. And this looks a little bit confusing, but all you need to know is that it includes another type of loop called a for each loop, which I'll make again down there, and I'll explain it in further detail. But it takes X, a word, and then for every letter or for every character, it's going to assign letter to be each character in order from start to finish, and then it's checking if all of the letters that are in the word are also in here. That's it. So word is valid makes sure that our word is only composed of letters, because let's say if we input X, we can input like a bunch of other symbols. So we want to make sure it's only letters. This is all good. If word is valid, print, we'll do word submitted. Word submitted. And then we want to add word is valid to the word list. So the way we're going to do that is by another method called, so we're going to take our array, dot, append, open close bracket, and then inside of it we're going to write X. So this is another method that I haven't talked about. You notice the letter changed color, so Repl.it recognizes this as something it can do. An append takes X, our word, and puts it at the end of word list. So the first time this runs, it's just going to be at the beginning. The second time it runs, it's going to be the next, right next to it. So index 1, because remember we start counting at 0 for arrays. And then we don't need this else anymore, but we do want to break it somehow. So how are we going to break our loop? Well, we can do it with an if statement. And we want to check if submission count is equal to 10. And then hit another colon, enter, make sure it's on an indent, break. And that's it. We're going to run. And we're going to type a word, call it hat, jack, break, play, treat, Actually, let's do pool. And you notice here it doesn't actually submit the word. And that's because our code has a flaw, which I've recognized, and I've decided to keep it for simplicity's sake. You can't have a word with multiple letters in it, or multiple of the same letter in it, because it's going to look for two different O's in our letter count, and in our letters, and we only have one right here. We don't have one anywhere else. So I've kind of left it there, but that is something you can I recognize. We're also going to do rate. We're going to do by, and we should almost be there. So I'm going to write actually any random group of letters would work. So if I said ret, still works. And I think we've almost reached 10 words, so I'm just going to write some nonsense. And you notice we're still going. True. And we're still going, and I think we've reached more than 10. And you notice it doesn't end. Well, why is that? So currently, our code is set to end when submission count is equal to 10. Right? Submission count is an int, which, if you guys remember, is a non-decimal number. And you notice, hey, where are we making it 10? Because you see, submission count isn't changed anywhere. We're just checking if it's 10 here, but we're not changing it. It's going to start at 0 and doesn't change. So here, we're going to write submission count equals submission count. So whatever it already is plus 1, which is the exact same as submission count plus equals 1. So if I run this again, which I'm not going to this time, it is going to count all the way up to 10 and then end it there. Which, that's pretty good. But what else do we want to do? I mentioned that I want to use a for each loop. I want to talk about that because I want to elaborate more on, like, what does it mean? What are we doing with it? And in order to do that, I'm going to make another int called points equals 0. And I'll say for word in word list in word list. And we're gonna do this. But for now, I want to talk about this line. So for is talking about a for each loop. Word being each individual a variable that is assigned every element of word list from start to finish. So right now, there's when we reach here, there's going to be 10 words, because after 10 words have been added, it's going to break. And when we have a bunch of words, we're going to add up all of the how many letters are in each word. So len and then open close bracket takes in a string, and it counts how many characters are in that string. And again, points plus equals is just the same as points equals points plus whatever. In this case, we're adding the length of the word. And we're almost done. What I'd also like to do is print how many words we've earned. So we're going to take our string, we'll name it points, colon space, and then we're going to add points. But the thing is, we can't actually do that, right? It's noticing we're not allowed to add strings, which are groups of characters, and points, which are numbers. So how do we bypass that? Well, we bypass it by converting our string into, our int into a string. So this takes, so str open close bracket takes in a number, an int or a float. Remember, floats have decimal places, but we're only using ints. And it converts it to a string so that we can add it to another string. So I'm going to quickly do a test run and I'll get right back to you. And we're back. So I'm sure you notice I've typed in a bunch of words here. And you notice here when I use numbers, it doesn't submit the word. There's no word submitted. It just moves on. And the best thing to do is we could have an else here, which makes our code a little bit, or which makes the user understand a little bit more, like what are they supposed to do with our code. And this is called good code design. This is about like, what is somebody who has not, who doesn't see your code, doesn't understand your code. If they're just looking at this, they want to understand what's going on. So one of the things you can do is you can start your game off with a title and say, this is my game, enter a word, and that only using lowercase letters. Because if you notice numbers don't work, and if I put uppercase letters, which I haven't, it doesn't work. But once you get all the way to the end, you see word submitted, points 42. So all the way at the bottom in our for each loop, we're adding up all of the how many letters, how many characters are in each word, or how many letters, because we've already tested to make sure they're letters. So here we know all of them have to be letters. So we're asking how many letters are in each word, and then we're adding all the letters up, and then we're saying you have this many points. But that's all for today. Thank you very much for watching. I'll be back with episode 5 in a few days. And episode 5, I'm going to be talking about functions and libraries. But for now, you've created your very own, although albeit basic, but a more advanced game, shall we say. Thank you very much. See you next time.